In this tutorial, I will cover the basics of creating a simple material in Unreal Engine 5. I will also go over the changes you can make to a material through the material editor. In the end, I will briefly go over what material instances are and how you can use them. To get started, we will need a mesh to display our material while we create it. So open your content browser with Control Space, and the mesh we will use will be in the props folder under starter content. So starter content, click on props. And the one we are going to use is labeled SM Matte Preview Mesh. Click and drag out to place it into our world. So what is a material? A material is an asset that can be applied to a mesh to control the look of a given object. It's essentially the paint that goes on every 3D object in Unreal. To see what material an object is using, click on the mesh and look in the details panel under materials. From here, you can change it to any material that's available in your content browser. So I can change it to this metallic one. I could change it to this gold one. I could change it to this copper one. But I will also show you how to create your own material. To create your own material, open up the content browser with Control Space again. Scroll up through your folders and click on Content. Then right-click it and click New Folder and label it My _ Materials. So that way you can have a separate folder that is for the materials that you make yourself. And to create your material, you're going to right-click with the folder selected, right-click onto open space here, and click on Material. Label it M _ Material. Now to apply this new material that we made to a mesh, click it and drag it over the mesh that you're going to put it on. Now since we just started making this material, we haven't done anything to it yet, so for now it shows this checkerboard pattern on it to signify that the material is like a blank piece of paper. There's no changes made to it, and it's basically ready for whatever you're gonna do to it to make it the way you want it. Now going to the material we just made, double click it to open up the material editor. This is where we will be defining what the material looks like. So to the left, we have a viewport of what the material looks like. There are some settings up here that you can choose whether it's in a lit environment, unlit, wireframe. You can left click to rotate it and right click to zoom in and out. Under that, we have the details panel where we have a lot of options that define how the material sort of behaves. And to the right, we have the palette, which showcases all of the nodes that we can use. And there's a search bar so you can look through them for any specific one you need. But you can also right click in any open space and search from there. And this here is the material graph where we will be doing most of our work. Now what we have here is a list of inputs that determine how our material looks. Now I'm going to go over the inputs at the upper half of this list because the ones in the bottom half take a while to explain and they're a little more complicated. These over here are a little more basic. So the base color has to do with the color of the material itself. So for these meshes, I made them all yellow. So I chose for the base color to be yellow. And metallic controls how much the material resembles metal. So here we have the value at 0, meaning that it doesn't resemble metal at all. Here we have it at 0.5, so it's at half its power pretty much. And here we have it at 1, which is its max. This is as much of a metal it's going to look like. Specular has to do with how much light it reflects. So here we have it at not reflecting any light. Here we have it reflecting a little light, and you can kind of see because you got a little bit of little highlight right there. And right here, it's reflecting more light. Over here, we are displaying the roughness. So I already set it at a metallic. So these two are the same, except the roughness on this is set at 0. So it's really reflective, really smooth. Here, I made it a little rough, 0.5. So you can see it's not really reflecting anything anymore, but it still looks a little shiny because it's reflecting light at least. And here we have it completely rough. It's not reflecting anything, not reflecting light either. Now, anisotropy is a little more complicated. It has to do with what the reflection of light does, and it's not commonly used at a beginner's level, so I'm not really demonstrating it here. Emissive color has to do with giving a material a glow. So this material on the inside, separate from what's on the outside, you can see that it kind of glows just a little bit, very dim. Here, it's a little bright, and right here, it's at its brightest. Now, getting into how you can make use of these inputs, what you're going to be using a lot are these things called constants. Now, to make a constant, you can go to the palette and search up constants. And the ones at the top are the ones that are usually used. The ones we'll be using is this top one and constant 3 vector. Another way you can find these is by right-clicking here and typing constant, and it'll be right here. Or if you want just a regular constant, the one that was at the very top, hold down 1 and left-click, shortcut to get it, and hold down 3 and left-click to get the constant 3 vector that I was talking about earlier, also in the palette that we were going to use. After getting these, you're going to want to convert them to parameters, and you can label them. We won't do that right now. I just want to show what a parameter looks like. Parameters get useful once we get into instance materials, but I will explain more on that in a little bit. So after making a vector3 node, basically what this node does is that it gets you a color. So double click it, choose a color. I will go with a light blue. And you'll notice that nothing has happened to our material. And that's because we haven't connected it to the base color, which is what we're using it for. So once we do that, we'll see that the material turned blue. Now, another way you can get a parameter and connect it to base color in a quicker way, you can right click on base color and promote it to parameter for there, and it's already labeled as base color. Now it's really useful to label your nodes so that you know what you're using them for and what they should be connected to. So once you have that there, you can double click, choose your color again, make sure you bring up this value so that brings light into your color and it actually shows. Now once we do that, you'll notice that our material right here, it isn't blue like we have here. Now the reason for that is because you need to click apply, and once you do that, it takes a while, but it shows right here. Make sure you also save so that whatever changes you made to the material, it will save across your whole project. Now for this parameter, if we go to the details panel, there's a default value that you can choose. Now for most of these inputs, the scale ranges from 0 to 1, with 0 being the weakest, like very bottom, like near to like no effect, to 1 being like the most it can be set at. If you set it past 1, it won't really have much of a difference. So if you want to go for like a middle ground, you would put 0.5 or 0.25 or 0.005. So that's basically how your scale is going to look like. Again, we can just go to metallic here, right click and promote to parameters so that it labels itself as metallic for us. And again, if we set the value to 1 at its strongest, you'll see that the material goes from smooth to a little metallic. If we go to roughness and we promote it to a parameter, if we leave it at 0, it leaves it as super smooth. Remember, 0 being at the very bottom, meaning it's very smooth. And then if we select this and we set it at 1, it'll make it very rough, really blurry. There it is. If you don't want this to be connected here, you can disconnect a node by holding down Alt and clicking on whatever input you want to disconnect it from. And it'll do it like so. Make sure you save. And you'll see that the changes were saved to the material. Now, using the emissive color input requires a couple of extra steps. So what you're going to want to do is right-click and promote it to a parameter, and you'll see that it gives you a vector3 node instead of a constant. The reason for that is because it's letting you choose the color that the glow will be. So choosing the color and bringing that value up will let you choose the color of the glow, which we set it at blue. So now it's a lot brighter than it was before. If you want to choose how strong the glow is, hold down 1 to create a constant. It's better if you convert it to a parameter. Again, and I'll explain later why it's useful to do so. And label it glow strength, because that's essentially what it's doing. It's going to give us, we're going to choose the number that controls how strong the glow is going to be. Now, if you connect it to emissive color, you'll see that you can only connect one node to the emissive color input at a time. It won't let you do both. That's where, hold down Alt and click, that's where the multiply node comes in. Hold down M and left click, or you can search for it here by right clicking or open up the palette. Get the multiply node, connect emissive color to A and glow strength to B. Now basically what the multiply node does is that it combines both of their actions to connect it to the emissive color so that you will still have the color and control its strength. So when I connect it, nothing happens. That's because I turned off the glow by setting the value at 1. The strength of the glow is at 0, meaning that it's not glowing at all. If I put it at 0.3, you'll see that it glows a little more. If I set it at 1, which is the max, it glows at its strongest. Again, click apply so that you can see the changes you made to the material. Now we're going to want to disconnect these nodes. We don't want it glowing anymore. Don't delete, just Alt, click, apply. Make sure you save your changes as well. You want to make sure you're saving it. Oh, right here, it's save. Now those are pretty much the basics to making a simple material, but as you saw, I kept having to click apply and save, and it would take a moment to actually save the changes and show it in my viewport here. Now, when you're working with materials, sometimes you'll be changing a value to get it just the right way you want it to be, and having to save and wait for it to show up might not be the quickest way to do that, which is where material instances come in. Material instances are basically a child to the parent, meaning that you kind of duplicated them, but whatever you do to the parent material affects the duplicate. But whatever you do to the duplicate won't change what you did to the source material. And it's really useful because you can make multiple children of the same material. Now, it's really useful because when you make multiple duplicates of, or not duplicates, the multiple material instances of the same parent material, it allows you to make a lot of changes to all of those without affecting the first one you made. And let's just say you decided that you wanted all of the materials to like change just a little bit. All you have to do is change the parent material. So if you open up the control space to open up the content browser, right click it and create material instance. When you double click it, it'll open up its own material editor but looks a little different. Now this is where all of the parameters that we made earlier come into play. We made base color a parameter, metallic a parameter, and all of these parameters, right? Now they would show up here if they were plugged in. The only parameters we have plugged in are the base color and metallic. So that's why they show up here. Check their checkboxes so that you are able to change their values. Now, if you go into the content browser again, get the instance and set it to a different one, they'll look similar, and that's because we didn't change anything. Now, if we go to the material instance editor and we change the base color, if we change it to like pink, give it a pink color, you'll see that we changed the material instance, but not the source material. Now, if we wanted to get rid of its metal look, we put metal to 0. There we go. Now it changes drastically. If we go into the material here and we added the roughness, which will add the roughness at 0, meaning we'll make it reflective. It's going to be very shiny. We put it to roughness here, and we put save. It'll make both of them reflective. This one a little more than the other because here we messed with the metallicness a little bit. If we put this at 1, same as the parent material, it'll be just as reflective. But that's how material instances work, and that's how they become useful. It's when you're making very small differences and you don't want to have to constantly go back from the editor to the viewports trying to see if you made any difference or not. They really save you time that way. Now, to recap everything I went over, a material is the paint that goes over a 3D model, also known as a mesh. After creating a material, the material editor is where you define the look and effects the material has by connecting nodes here to the various inputs. To adjust the visuals of a material more efficiently, a material instance allows you to see the changes you make in real time using parameters we made in the parent material. So these parameters show up here as long as they're connected. Like if roughness is not here at all and we save, then of course it changes both and roughness does not show up as an option here. If we get roughness and we do connect it, it affects them both because whatever happens to the parent affects the child. And here, roughness shows up as an option and we can mess with it. We can make it really rough, really blurry, and it's blurry. Or if we scale it, we'll see it change in real time without having to compile and save every single time. And that concludes my tutorial.